Do you suffer from stash? Is stash getting in the way of your knitting plans? Do you have one of those square IKEA bookcases that needs to be empty like right now? Try Stashdown. Stashdown has helped millions of people across the globe to get control of their stash. Call your doctor today and ask if Stashdown can be right for you. Users of Stashdown have reported to experience the following: cold flashes, loss of life enjoyment, reduced creativity, abundance of space, abundance of disposable income. Hello YouTube, welcome to BraidAndTinker. My name is Melanie and I make videos about knitting. It's January, it's time to make a start on your good intentions. Be more healthy, drink your water. For many knitters and crocheters, it's also time to think about sizing down their stash. Currently, Instagram is rife with hashtags like stashdown and super stashdown and stashdown23 and stash busting, knit your stash, stashuary, the stashioning. Okay, I made that last one up, but still. Everybody is thinking about knitting from stash. And I will be the first to admit, I have also been lured by this romantic idea of only knitting from stash and using it up to its full potential and having no yarn in my house and an empty, minimalist, aesthetic dream. Maybe I'll never even buy yarn again. Maybe I'll just unravel the things I have and reknit them into something else. Live like that and people will just applaud my thrifting skills online. I've also been thinking maybe a stash is a good thing. I'm currently working hard on a stash busting project and I'm having super much fun with it. It's great. It's colourful, it's bright, it's a little bit crazy. I really like it. And I can't help but think I would never have knit this thing if I didn't have a stash. If I would only buy the yarn for a certain project, I would have never bought 18 skeins of random yarn to put in one cardigan. But now that I'm doing it, I'm having lots of fun with it. There is something in the fiber arts community called Sable, which is not a super cool superhero group armed with crochet hooks and knitting needles, but it stands for Stash Accumulation Beyond Life Expectancy. Basically, it means that you have more yarn than you can knit away in your entire life. And it's actually pretty easy to get to that point because buying yarn can be way faster than that you can knit it up. I mean, you can buy yarn in a store, you can buy yarn online, you can buy yarn when you are in a yarn store and buy it online at the same time. I mean, it's just pretty much endless and super scalable. Knitting, however, is very much not scalable. Anybody who's ever had a fiber arts business will know that knitting sweaters for money is, yeah, that's going to give you carpal tunnel. It kind of seems that buying stuff for crafting and crafting are just two different hobbies. Some people do both. Some people just do one or the other. And I think with stash, there's also a bit of a geographical element to it. I live in Europe, houses are smaller here. I don't have space for stash. I have 3 Kerber boxes in the living room that are just staring at me. I don't have a spare room that has been magically transformed into a craft room. Many people don't here. I said many, I didn't say everybody. If you have a craft room and you live in Europe, congratulations, you're amazing, but just not everybody does. And I'm sure not everybody has a craft room in the US either. It's not what I meant. But we all know houses here are smaller and in the US we have McMansions. But even having a large craft room is not really fixing your problems because everybody knows that the bigger the size of your room, the more stuff you're just going to accumulate. And the same is for craft rooms. If you have a larger craft room out of nowhere, then you're just going to fill it up with craft supplies. So as I said, I currently have 3 plastic containers that are quite large that contain my yarn stash. And I would love to bring that down to 2 plastic containers, because then they could fit underneath my bed. And for me, that would feel relaxing. I could take them out of the living room. There would just be some more space there. It would be slightly more aesthetically pleasing. So that's something that I'm working towards. So for many people, the stash that they have can actually bring on quite a bit of stress, either because they feel they have too much and shouldn't have that stash, or because they don't have enough, and you know, they are constantly stressed because they want to do things and want to knit things and have plans, but they don't have the yarns to go with it. And we also know that having stress seriously hinders your creativity, which, you know, kind of defeats the point when we're talking about a craft or a hobby. It is something that is used as a creative outlet. But if at the same time this is giving you stress that hinders your creativity, you're not really in a good place. For me, that is something where my stash actually comes into play, my creativity. When I finish with the project and I don't know what to knit next, I go to my stash and I pull out some yarns and I feel them, I smell them, I look at the colours, hold them up to the light, pray to the gods. No, I'm kidding. But I am motivated and inspired by the yarns that I have, and they feed into my creativity. And sometimes, you know, it means I'll knit with whatever I have. Sometimes it means the yarns that I have can be supplemental to something that I buy. It can also mean that I decide, actually, I'm in a certain mood. None of these yarns are gonna work for the project that I have in mind right now. I'm just gonna buy something else, and that's all valid. So I've been looking online about, you know, sort of criticisms of stash, and there's 2 themes that I've seen a lot. One of them is people showing off their stash, which I think some people do feel kind of intimidated by stash that YouTubers have. I'm lucky, I don't have that much stash. But sometimes you see this where, you know, somebody is sitting in front of a giant bookcase filled with like what looks to be thousands and thousands of skeins of indie dyed yarn. But obviously this can be quite intimidating to people who either don't have the money for this, or people who are new to the craft and think, oh my god, if I want to be a knitter, if I want to like be serious in this community, this is what I need, because these are the things that people see. And so it can work very alienating to some people. Another thing that people really can't stand, which I'm very much guilty of, is the don't tell my hubby I bought this crowd. It's like, ugh. It's mostly women kind of jokingly telling other people not to spill their secrets and that they have secret stash, and they hide their stash in places around the house, and oh no, I hope nobody finds out. It's just a very toxic take to me. If you are in a committed relationship, equal partnership, you know, you should both do what you feel like doing, and you should both support each other in those things. And if you have your money and your partner has their money and you both have hobbies, you should be able to spend it the way you like. And if you are like maybe a stay-at-home parent and the other parent is the working parent, that parent can only go to work because you are doing the everything else, taking care of children, cleaning, washing, all of that stuff. So, you know, that just means that you're entitled basically to half their income. And I hope that people actually understand that it's not, you know, oh, I'm a stay-at-home parent, which means I get nothing and I cannot spend money on myself. That's, you know, it's 2023, things don't work like that anymore. It's easy for me to say that. I live alone, I have a boyfriend, but he doesn't live here. I'm with my kid. My money is my money. It supports my household. I'm 100% in control of my finances and responsible for all the money that goes in and out here. And nobody gives two shits if I spend it all on yarn. I don't, but nobody cares. I also feel like it's kind of jokingly feeds in these misogynistic ideas that some people have about women, you know, silly little women with their silly little hobbies. They don't understand money. Oh, look, there she goes, spending all her money on yarn. They don't understand how things work in the real world. It's just so frustrating. Like, it's fine. No, men have hobbies, women have hobbies, many people have hobbies. Men knit, women do woodworking. It's a free-for-all. It's do what you want. So once I heard a knitter explain that she saw her stash as an investment box or place. She would buy yarn in periods when she was kind of flush with cash, and she would buy nice yarns and store them. And that way, that if she had periods where she had not much money, she would be able to still continue knitting with these nice yarns. And this is something that I've heard from other people, like during COVID, who maybe lost their jobs, that they were super grateful that they had a big stash, because it meant that they could just keep knitting even though there was no income coming in. And like, I totally understand that sentiment, but for me personally, I would rather not have a big stash, but put that money into like a bank or an investment account, because you get interest. If you have a high yield savings account, look those up, by the way, thank me later. You get quite a bit of interest, and you know, interest on your bank account is compounding interest, which means you get interest on the interest that you've gotten in the past. And it doesn't work like that with the stash, unfortunately. It's not like if I put 10 skeins of yarn in my stash that I have, you know, a month later I open the box and there is an 11th skein of yarn. It's magic. It's not a thing. But I do understand that, you know, it feels like the yarn that you have in your stash is cheaper than the yarn that you buy today or tomorrow, because prices are rising, there's rising inflation, shipping costs are going up, we have Brexit, you know, things are getting more expensive. So things are literally more expensive than they were yesterday. I would rather have the money in my bank account, because it means I can make different choices if I need to either spend it on yarn or if I need to spend it on something else like an emergency. I also have quite a bit of feelings about taste. Like, my taste, my personal preferences in colour and the yarns that I knit with have changed so much since like 3 years ago. And I think that's the same for a lot of people. If you look at the patterns that are popular now, okay, it's all a bit sad beige. We know the color craziness is kind of subdued a little bit, but it does mean that tastes have changed and people want to knit more pieces that look like something they could have bought on the high street, but then made it themselves. And you know, obviously it'll be of a better quality yarn and probably a better quality of construction. I don't know if you've seen sweaters in stores lately, but it's kind of pathetic. It doesn't really matter what your taste is. It's just, there is a high probability that your taste will change in a couple of years. You don't really want to be stuck with colors or yarns that you don't like anymore, or where you will feel like forced to knit with them, even if you would rather knit with something else. My perspective on the whole discussion of big stash or no stash is that those are not the two only options. You could have medium-sized stash, and really you are the only person who can decide what medium-sized means. You could have a massive craft room, you could have tons of disposable income, And then a medium-sized stash will look different than to someone who has a small living space and less disposable income. The size of your stash will depend on what you think the size of your stash should be. To me, it's all about balance. I want to have supplies in my house that kind of delight and surprise, inspire creativity, but I don't want to have too much stuff that I feel boxed in and forced to make certain choices about certain things. Your stash should tickle your creativity. It should not be dragging you down. At the end of the day, though, you are the only person who decides what the size of your stash should be, nobody else. If you do want to reduce your stash, I highly recommend the latest video of My So-Called Handmade Life, which is a podcast by Michelle from the US. She has a really good video with lots of tips about feelings and emotions that we have when we're buying stuff that we may not need, and things that you can do with just random skeins of stuff that you have in your house. The only reason I have a video of fire here is because I want to warn you that if your house burns down, you will lose all of your stash, and you need to make a contingency plan for that. I'm not even wearing any knitwear today. I'm going to be exposed as a fake knitter.